Welcome to Never Settle. I'm here with Josh and Ben from Foundation Restoration. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
For sure.
Well,
All right. So, between the two of you in the room, how many years of experience are we looking at in foundations and basement waterproofing?
Me personally, I've been doing this a little over 25 years. I know Josh got a little bit more than me.
yeah, I think this is my 31st year.
Wow. All right. So, I'm not great at math, but well over 50 years combined in this space. That's awesome. So, I want to also talk about some education for our listeners and viewers. What are some things that, if you're having a basement waterproofed, what should you be asking a contractor that comes out to take a look at your space?
Yeah, I guess the best answer to that, my feeling, is a lot of companies have got away from the customer service end of this, right? And they may be capable of helping you, but what is that going to look like? If something does go wrong, or if there's a disconnect in what was told to you versus what's being delivered, right? And so I know just from years of doing this, a lot of companies, you meet that inspector, he pours sugar in your ear, and then a little down the road, he's hard to get a hold of, or he's not accountable, or he's not the guy where the buck stops, really. So we see a lot of that, and with companies I've worked for in the past, that's kind of the direction they were heading.
Yeah. I would agree with everything that you said there, Josh. There's always the basics though too, like make sure that they're licensed, make sure that they're insured. You want to see copies of those things, or at least verify that's true. It's not a bad idea too to get some references. Try to find out other people who have done work by them, or at the very least look into their reviews. Search them up online. Make sure that you're dealing with somebody that knows what they're doing.
What about warranty?
Yeah, I mean, warranty is a huge factor in this industry that we're in. If somebody's not willing to stand behind what they're doing, that's a pretty big red flag, right? So, you want to make sure that they have a lifetime warranty, and you should read that warranty, because not all warranties are created equal. There are quite a few of them I've seen out there that have plenty of ways for them to wiggle out of honoring it, right? Lots of clauses, lots of little things that you need to make sure you understand. Because lifetime warranty sounds great on the surface until the lawyers get involved and the fine print comes into play, and, well, actually that's not covered and this wasn't covered, and sorry, you're on your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Makes sense. Is there specific things, questions you might ask somebody when it comes to, say, basement waterproofing versus a foundation issue?
Yeah, I would say yes, right? They're two separate issues, right? So, and one is often caused by the other, right? So the lack of waterproofing your basement oftentimes leads to, more expensive repairs with foundation. The question I would ask, if it's, waterproofing my basement, if that's what we're talking about, how are we draining that pressure, right? And are we doing it in a way that's going to protect the stability of my foundation, long after my basement is dry, right? Years ago, a lot of companies would use a certain pipe system, and that pipe system oftentimes would undermine the foundation. In doing that, your basement was dry, in fact. But the years later, now your foundation's moving, or it is compromised, and it's due to the system they installed for you.
Yeah, you definitely have to think fourth dimensionally when you're waterproofing your basement, because just like Josh said, there are things you can do that will stop the water, but you can create a whole different issue. You can create a bigger problem while trying to solve the water problem. So you definitely need somebody who's knowledgeable in all the different methods that are out there to make sure you're doing what's safest for your foundation specifically, because just like he said, they're hand in hand. Typically, I'd say 90% of foundation damage is a result of poor waterproofing or failed waterproofing that was never addressed, right? So that's why they end up in this situation where the walls are buckling or the house is now sinking because somebody just ignored that wet spot on the floor for 20 years.
Right.
And I would add that every foundation is different, right? Every home is different, and there's tons of ways to build a foundation, right? And so there's not a one size fits all solution, right? And I mean, when you think waterproofing, you think, whether it be outside or inside, you think a pipe, right? And the design of that pipe, where it's located, in the system, all those things play a factor in the stability of your home, right? And what design the pipe has, right? And we offer 4 different pipe designs, and different applications for some of those pipes based on your home, right? And so a one-size-fits-all mentality just really doesn't work, when it comes to basement waterproofing.
And that's the benefit of working with an individualized contractor. I don't know how to say that, what I'm looking for specifically, but just an independent local contractor, as opposed to somebody who's part of a corporation or a franchise, where they're actually forced to use that one system. That's and it's the best thing since sliced bread. But those of us in the industry know that that's not the case. Just like Josh said, the house was built in 1910. It was done quite differently than one built in 2010, right? So we take a different approach depending on what we're actually looking at, which is the best way to tackle any problem.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to get into or ask you about was, the difference between working with a local family-owned company versus, say, there's a lot of private equity in the space now and big national brands. So what are some of the advantages to going kind of more local?
Yeah, so I mean, probably one of my favorite things about my job and what we do is we don't have that one-size-fits-all mentality. You're right. We come at every project with a mindset of we'll figure this out, right? We'll come up with the solution. We'll engineer the solution. We'll make sure that's going to be a long-term, warrantable solution for you. And years of being with that big box store, we were really just I was painted into pushed into a corner where this is what I had to offer, and if it didn't fit, well, it has to fit, right? And we take a completely different approach. Our team we're licensed across the board, licensed HVAC, licensed plumber, licensed electrician, builder, we're across the board. So with all of that in-house, we're really able to, come to a guy like Ben that's licensed in HVAC and ask him, what are your take on this? How can we go about fixing this correctly? And my favorite part of my job is that project that all these other companies said it couldn't be fixed, or it was it's out of the their realm of abilities even, and then at the end of it we fixed it, right? And I can think of a ton of jobs just like that I just thoroughly enjoy being involved in them, right? Where everybody else said that the house had to be torn down, excuse me, and the end result is it's fixed, and it can live on, right?
I would say the biggest difference is accountability and reliability. Being a small family-owned company, it's everything to us. Every single employee is very invested in the success of the company. Whereas I have in the past I worked for one of these big giant corporate entities, and it's quite soulless. I mean, for lack of a better word. I mean, everybody's just there to earn a paycheck, and they don't really care much about anything outside of their small scope of work. This is what I have to do, and if I can't help you with that, or if it's not my problem, I don't care. And they just kind of push you off to someone else, and they've got this huge structure of all these different middle managers, and supposedly deal with these things. But as a consumer, if you've ever been through that, you just feel like you're just getting handed off, and you're just lost in the sauce, and there's nobody accountable. There's no, you're complaining, and oh, we understand how you feel, and you get all the platitudes, but nothing happens. Whereas with a company like us, having Josh, involved in day-to-day operations, it just makes all the difference in the world, because we all know that in construction, not everything goes exactly as planned.
Sure.
Right? Sometimes things pop up, things happen. Having an owner that is able to step up and make changes on the fly and do things that are right because it's the right thing to do. It's why I'm proud to be here, why I'm proud to be a part of this company, right? Like, because I know that everybody that I talk to or that I set up to have a project done, I know they're going to be very well taken care of. So that's, that'd be my answer.
That's great. Speaking of the, specialties you mentioned on, like, having HVAC certified people in the company, how's that improve the process for, a homeowner if I have a basement issue or foundation issue.
Yeah.
Since it's not an HVAC issue or an electrical issue.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we do includes different, licensing that's needed, right? Whether it's HVAC or plumbing, and you think waterproofing your basement, well, you only need a plumbing license, we'll say. But what if your furnace is in the way, right? Or what if there's electrical that has to be altered? Excuse me. With other companies, you're going to be dealing with subcontractors, and once going back to that accountability, right? Like they're not going to come in with our trucks and our shirts, and right, you're going to be dealing with different schedules, different, right? Whereas us,
Communication becomes a big issue there.
It does, yeah, and, no question. And with us, carrying all those licenses, it really allows us to really control the schedule, right? So that we're waterproofing your basement. We're not waiting on an electrician to get some freedom to come help. And we've scheduled him around this portion of the project and that portion. And I think what it does, to our customers is it really kind of not only streamlines and makes it easy, right? But it allows for these projects to be completed in a much faster time, right? I mean, most folks have had that contractor out to their home, and it's taken twice as long to get something done as
And twice as expensive.
Yeah,
as,
and
they,
twice-
as they first told you.
Yeah, right. A lot of us, are familiar with that, and I think that the reason we continue to get all of these 5-star reviews and to really really excel at that is that the ability to really make that process be very fluid, right, from start to finish. So you asked me why is it important? I think to have a building license, a plumbing license, a heating cooling license. All of those play a small role, and even for some of these larger projects, right, where in order to fix the structural integrity of your home, it's going to require moving your furnace, we'll say, or moving that, and to know that the project can go off without hitch. Guys like Ben and some of our other licensed guys, we're able to bounce them ideas around the shop, right, and so that by the time we do start your project, we've had professionals have their eyes on it. Ben's put his eyes on it. I've had mine, and that runs through. And by the time we come, we have a really, really, clear plan at the way this should look and how we could do it in a timely manner so that it's not so invasive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got to imagine that every project isn't just like, well, here's what we do. It's a waterproofing. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
Like, every house is different. Every problem is probably different.
No question. Yeah.
So not only on the installation side is it helpful, but also on the inspection side. Like you mentioned HVAC, like that, in my mind, that immediately go to crawl spaces because those go hand in hand. Wet crawl spaces, it's more than just having puddles down there, being an issue. That dramatically it affects the overall health and the air quality in your home if you've got puddles sitting underneath your house, right? So understanding the heating and cooling aspect of it and what else needs to be done besides just putting in a pump and throwing a liner on the ground, which is what majority of all these other contractors do. Having somebody like myself who understands the importance of properly conditioning the air and ventilating that space so that it remains healthy, that it doesn't develop mold problems. I mean, we've seen plenty of crawls over the years that somebody hired got it encapsulated because it was cold, right? They're trying to solve an issue with energy, and they created a huge mold and rot problem because they didn't understand what they were doing. All they were thinking about is warmer. We're going to make it warmer. And then they cut off all the airflow, and then the humidity builds up, and it rots out from underneath them, right? So that's why it's such a huge benefit to have all these different trades involved in the entire process, not even just the installation. So.
Well, I would add that when it comes to training, right? Like, I mean, Ben, a heck of a lot more about that side of it than I, right? But that distance between you and I is shortening because I'm around you. I hear, right? And our team, this guy may not be a licensed HVAC guy, but he sat in classrooms listening to you talk about it, and now we got a bunch of very educated guys that may not have a license here, but now they're very knowledgeable in what we're looking for, right? And what is the how to provide that end result that that just comes off without hitch, right? And
I feel like that kind of goes back to what we were talking before as far as it being a small company, it's like it's more of a collaborative atmosphere. You know, it's not that strict, oh shoot, here comes the boss, don't say anything that might get you in trouble type of thing. It's like we all share equally and openly and try to help each other and educate each other, and really at the end of the day just do what's best for our customers. That's what we all enjoy doing, you know. So
That's great. You mentioned last time we spoke about another kind of difference was having a steel manufacturer like right down the road or something like that, and how that's different than some of the larger national companies.
Yeah. I mean, kind of back to that one size fits all, right? I mean, if you know, fabrication work, right, in our industry, especially on the structural side of it, you know, once again, it's not, you know, this product doesn't fit every basement, but could it if we deviated just a little bit and we fabbed a certain bracket, or if we did, you know, and you know, so we do a lot of just that, right? Where you know, we're not ordering our products out of a catalog, right? We have these certain products we know work well and they apply to the majority of homes. But when you don't fit that footprint, right? And we look at it, we come up with solutions, bounce ideas, run it through our engineering, and figure out the math behind it, and we make that product specifically for your home. So whereas a lot of companies would be walking away from that project, or you know, they're not able to help you.
yeah, I was gonna say, having worked for one of those large corporate outfits,
Sure.
that's not possible. You know, if the product we have won't do what you need it to do, too bad. And they just walk. You know, there's way too many moving parts and moving pieces to do anything specialized or have some kind of special bracket made. It would take you 6 months, and it cost them way more than it's worth.
Yeah, 10 approvals from this manager and that man.
Right. So
Have it shipped over from
the
China.
agility and flexibility that we have as a smaller company is I mean, it can't be understated.
Yeah, I mean, to what you were saying, Nick. Yeah, what, a half a mile down the road from us, we have a fab shop that we work closely with, and they've pretty much turned over their entire production to our products, right? And so that they, you know, the products we buy regularly, right, made in America, American steel, but then the ability to, on very short notice, say, hey, we need the bracket to be, you know, turned, or we need this piece of it to be larger, or we need holes in the steel here so that we can fasten it, you know, and you know, to me, that is just a game changer for us, because, you know, we don't have to walk away or force a size, you know, 8 shoe on a 10 foot, right? I mean, like we're going to get you the size it fits, right? And yeah, so I mean, it's
and you know, the local aspect I feel is important too, at least to myself, and I know to a lot of other people, is, you know, we're stimulating the local economy as opposed to buying steel from overseas, something that was made cheaply in India or China. You know, we're keeping Michiganders employed.
That's
right?
awesome.
Yeah, and really, as we set out looking for our product lines and the things, you know, the vast majority, I mean, really the vast majority is American made, right? And you know, to me, you know, the tariffs, right? The tariffs that everybody was terrified of, right? They really didn't affect us, because you know, the stuff's right down the road, or it's you know, a couple cities over where we could pick it up, or it's even out of state, but it's still, it was made here. That, you know, I think one product that we have was affected by tariffs ever so slightly, you know, and which wasn't a game changer, right?
Sure.
It wasn't. We didn't have to increase our prices to sell you Chinese goods,
Or
right?
suffer the long shortages because you couldn't get things shipped over and supply lines were down, and you know,
Wow, that's really cool.
benefits.
So, when it comes, you were speaking about health issues with, you know, the crawl space, encapsulation. Have you guys had to go out and fix other jobs that
Oh gosh.
other companies had done? What are some of the stories?
Yeah, more often than you should have to, but yeah, that's an unfortunate truth. Is and kind of like what I was saying before, I see it more often with the insulation companies. A lot of times it's the spray foam guys, the guys that just, you know, spray foam works excellent in every other level of your home, from the first floor up. I mean, it's a great product. It's, you know, works really well, but when you have areas where moisture is a factor, what ends up happening is they end up trapping moisture in the framing down there, and it literally rots from the inside out, right? So you can create a huge problem if you don't understand that water aspect of it, that moisture aspect of it, and you just shoot foam all over everything and put some visqueen down on the ground. Years ago, like the crawl space vents were there for a reason, right? It makes it cold down there and you get frozen pipes and stuff like that, but you couldn't just let air stagnate underneath your house. Because,
humid air.
Right. I mean, and so along those lines, like humid air is more dense than drier air, which means it's heavier. So by nature, the nature of physics, it's going to naturally collect at the lowest point in your home. So if you've got an airspace down there with no vents, no openings, it is going to build up with moisture. Even if you have a vapor barrier down and the water's covered, the moisture that we generate just living in a house, showering and cooking and all the things we do as humans, will generate enough humidity and moisture to build up down in the crawl and just create a whole host of health issues, mold, rot, all different kinds of problems. And the biggest issue with crawl spaces is they're out of sight, out of mind, right? Nobody gets in them. Mm-hmm. Who wants to get in a crawl space?
Nobody.
But you only get in there if you absolutely have to, right? And even then, people are like, as quick as they can. Mm-hmm. Nobody really looks around and inspects their crawl space. So, we've back to what your question was. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many in the 15 years I've been doing this specifically, crawls and foundations. I've lost count. Way too many to count. So it's unfortunate. That's like what we were saying about why it's so important to have somebody knowledgeable in HVAC, because that is really, when it comes to crawls specifically, that is one of the most overlooked aspects of encapsulation, is what's going to happen to the air once I close these vents off and I put all this insulation up. What's going to be the effect of that long term. Right.
And it may look beautiful, right, when they're done. It's white, it's clean, but, once again, folks aren't hanging out down there, right? Mm-hmm. So what if, everything they did, although aesthetically it's, pleasing, right, but you shut that door and you think, I never have to look back,
great,
right?
Yeah.
I never have to look back. And then, a year or two down the road, folks are sick in the house, or they're, right there,
or it's a weird smell. When we come home, there's a weird smell.
Yeah, and oftentimes it takes some time to figure out where that smell's coming from, where that, why aren't we well? Why are we having respiratory or sinus issues, right? Yeah.
That's actually interesting. That's where the idea of encapsulation really was born. The industry shifted. There was a study done by the CDC back in '97, I believe it was, looking at the air quality in homes, trying to determine how much of people's living environment was a contributing factor to issues like chronic, sinus infections and headaches and breathing issues. Because the assumption before this study was maybe 10 to 15%. And then when they did it over the summer of 1997, the actual numbers came back at like 90 to 95%, right?
Wow.
And the two big offenders were crawl spaces and attics, the areas with no ventilation, a tendency for moisture to build up, and nobody ever looks in them, right? So up until then, there was no such thing as encapsulation. Crawls were just vented. That's just how you did it. And that's what got builders and architects and engineers all, thinking, how can we approach this differently? Because it's clearly not working. We have a problem here, right? Yeah. So, and in hindsight, it seems really simple, because an encapsulation is really no different than treating it like a basement. If someone told you to open your basement windows and leave them open all summer, you kind of look at them like they were silly. Right?
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that? Yet that's what we did with crawl spaces for 100 years. It was just leave the windows open, let the outside air blow through, right? Yeah. So, the knowledge that we have now collectively, it has improved dramatically just in the last 20 years alone.
Have you had some issues or good stories or jobs with mold, like having mold, like big health issue with any customers you've encountered?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. To think of which one. You and I talked a week ago about this, Nick. One that stood out to me was a school teacher, and she'd retired from, and not by her own will really. She started having health issues, and she was hypersensitive to odor and like perfume and cologne, and I was chatting with her, and she was talking about how it was just unbearable to be around folks that had deodorant on or perfume. That seems kind of odd, but we ended up tearing out her floor because it was so rotted. I mean, it was so rotted and infested with mold. And once again, she didn't go down there, right? She didn't look. No one paid attention. And I looked at it. I mean, it looked like a science project. I mean, it was just mold and fungus everywhere. And there was no saving the floor system. It was, it had gone too far. And so they stayed in a hotel for a few weeks while we tore out the floor system of her house and rebuilt it, sealed it up, encapsulated it, and she moved back in, and she was happy, at the end. But you fast forward a few months, and she sends me a handwritten letter that talked about how she couldn't believe she's getting ready to go back to work. She'd been out of work for years because of this, because of her health. I think at the time she had said she was going weekly to get injections, right, to fight off, these allergies and problems, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, the letter was, I mean, it choked me up reading it, because I mean, just knowing her and getting to know her throughout that, and very well written. We'll just say that. And she was so happy, couldn't say enough, right? As to, her health has just greatly improved now that this fungus is out of her house, right? And
essentially able to give her life back.
That's crazy.
It doesn't seem like that what we do is that important, but when situations like that pop up, I mean, it's an amazingly rewarding feeling. I mean, I've had a handful of those conversations myself over the years, and it really, really makes you appreciate what you do. And because like crawls especially, that's where that tends to come up as far as health issues go. But I've had plenty of phone calls, 6 months down the road, like I can't believe how much easier we can breathe, how much warmer our house is. Like we didn't realize it. Yeah. That's the biggest problem, is that most people just don't understand because they're not seeing it. It's not in front of their face. So, they're experiencing all these health issues, and they think it's just, normal. Until we come in and fix the problem that they didn't understand was even a problem, and then they're just ecstatic. They're like, this is amazing. I wish I'd have done it 10 years ago. That's the same thing everybody tells us.
Yeah. I was just thinking how often we hear, I don't have to wear house shoes around the house no more, right?
Right.
I don't have to. Before that, we'd let people wear their shoes because our floors were freezing cold. Now there's no shoes allowed in our house. Yeah. I mean, that's a small thing, but yeah, that lady, that's the one that really stands out to me, right? And because it was just unique. She retired, and she wasn't very old. I think she was in her mid-50s or something, and retired, way earlier than she would have needed to. And you could tell she enjoyed her job, right? You could tell she was passionate about it, and was really heartbroken she couldn't continue it.
Yeah, that's crazy. Probably the environment is kind of the last thing you're thinking of when you've got health issues. You're thinking,
your home's supposed to be your sanctuary, right?
Yeah, you're pointing in instead of pointing around,
Right, yeah.
So we've got spring coming up soon in Michigan, hopefully sooner than later. It's been so cold. What should homeowners be thinking about or looking at when it comes to your basement waterproofing or your foundation? Like, what are common things that people should be aware of for spring?
You want me to take it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so if you've got a basement, sump pump maintenance is key. Making sure that you check your sump pump regularly, lift the float, make sure it's turning on, it's ejecting water like it's supposed to. Having a redundancy is even better. Most homes, the builder minimum is a single sump pump in the basket. Well, we know that every sump pump fails eventually. It's a mechanical motor. Someday it's going to stop working. If that happens while there's a lot of water coming in, you have a flooded basement, right? So, but at a bare minimum, just check your pump, make sure that it's working correctly. But if you can, consider putting in a secondary pump so that when that does fail, because it's going to fail, you have something there to take over, right?
I would add, as far as like outside maintenance, what you can do, extending your downspouts away from your foundation, right?
Huge.
Just making sure that water is going to soak into the ground, right? And you're not going to keep water away from your house entirely, but if you can divert and migrate that water further from the house, right? It's less water your sump pump's going to see, right? It's less hydrostatic pressure on the walls, causing lateral loads on the walls, right?
And I'll add to that, a lot of people don't understand, and even gutter installers don't understand the importance of the length of the downspout at the bottom, right? So every basement, every foundation has what we call an active wedge, right? So if you imagine back to the day that they were building it, they dug a hole in the ground, obviously bigger than the basement,
Sure.
right? In order to be able to get in that hole and build the walls and work on both sides. On an average, that hole is 6 to 8 feet larger than the actual basement. Well, then they build the house and everything gets backfilled around it. That shape that was dug into the ground, that's there forever. Right, you've got virgin soil that's never been disturbed for thousands of years, and then you've got this backfilled soil. So even a house 50, 60, 100 years later, that doesn't matter. That shape is still there. So when you drop all your roof water and you only put a 2-foot extension on the bottom of it, you really have done nothing because you've just concentrated it into one spot, and it's still all going to go down around, and your basement waterproofing system has to take it in.
We call it the clay bull effect.
Right.
So
Right.
Sure.
a lot of southeast Michigan, most of Michigan is clay, and that's how ponds are made. Right. You dig this big hole and they make pottery out of clay. Right. It will hold. It will hold your cereal. Right. I mean.
Yep.
Right. So what Ben's saying is getting outside of that clay bowl. Right, which is much larger than the footprint of your house. And
Right.
you can go on, Ben. Sorry.
No, yeah. I was just gonna say, like, I recommend a minimum 10 foot for a downspout
Yeah.
extension. So, and it's it's a pretty easy weekend project. If you're a DIY or if you're not afraid to pick up a shovel and get your hands dirty, it's not rocket science. I mean, but yeah, to just dig a shallow trench and get that downspout at least 10 feet away. So that, like Josh was saying, you want to get it out onto that virgin soil outside of that bowl, right? You got to imagine that bowl, that hole that was there. If you can get all the roof water pushed past that, it's going to run off, and it's not going to end up in your sump pit basin, right? So,
What are some signs that I might have like a foundation issue that I might not know is a foundation issue that I just might see around my house?
Yeah.
Or I could look for in my house.
Yeah, I mean, obviously cracks, right? That's the tell, right? I mean, concrete has no elasticity, so it doesn't stretch, it doesn't flex, it breaks, right? And there, there's a few different structural issues you could have. One would be, wall deflection, where you have lateral pressures because soil's expanding, right? And that would be one, but generally, you're going to find cracks in the wall, right?
yeah, the simplest for the novice homeowner that doesn't understand anything about foundations, looking for cracks that come off of like door openings, the top corner of your door. If you've got a diagonal crack that shoots off of that, or a window, same thing, window opening. If you've got diagonal cracks coming off of that, that's a huge red flag that something isn't right, that there's a potential that your foundation is shifting or moving. If it's on the exterior walls, it's generally more foundation settlement. On the interior walls, that might be more of a crawl space or even a carpentry issue. That's where the inside, the framing of the house kind of starts to sag. You'll get those cracks as well. But yeah, just being cognizant of cracks in the walls and the drywall. And then if you have a brick house, if you see stair-stepping cracks, any kind of separation.
Something's moving.
Yeah, something is happening. I mean, and it's not, a lot of people would think, I'll just get a tuck pointer and fill it in. And you're not fixing anything. All you're doing is covering it up, right? So, so with basement walls, cracks are really key. I mean, there's some degree of cracking that is quote unquote normal, right? Like allowable. But you're talking like hairline, for like a poured foundation, for example, that's just all solid concrete. Mm-hmm. You can get shrinkage cracks or just hairline fractures that are just a natural byproduct of maybe the temperature when it was poured or the specific mix or whatnot. But anytime you see a crack that changes, like if it gets bigger, obviously, or if it's not uniform, that's another thing to look for. What we call V-shaped cracks, where they're super, super tight hairline, maybe at the bottom, and then they're an 1/8 inch wide at the top. It doesn't seem like much, but that variation means something. That tells you that one section of the wall or the other is actually moving,
like a hinge
independently.
Almost.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
like a hinge.
It could also be tipping in. They'll kind of open up as the wall tips in as well. So that's where having an expert come out and assess the situation is going to be key. Yeah. But watching for those cracks, looking for changes.
I would add that oftentimes those little cracks, if there's certain steps you can take and things that can be done that don't break the bank, right, and just don't further that problem, right, and maybe it's just you don't need major structural repair, but you need to waterproof just to drain the water away from the house, or you need to, like the downspouts.
Sure.
You know, the other thing that came to my mind as you were talking, Ben, would be like efflorescence, right? And you know,
What's that?
So yeah, so what it is, it's as moisture seeps through concrete, it wants to drag the settlement, and kind of like a salt. Oftentimes people think it's mold, right?
So they're actually lime and calcium deposits that are getting forced out of the structure, the porous structure of like a concrete block or cinder block. As water travels through that block, it will push lime and calcium out, which will form deposits on the inside.
Like
Looks
crystals.
like fuzz.
Yeah.
Looks like white fuzz, which is why people will mistake it for mold.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a sign that you've got water either sitting in the wall or directly outside the wall, because that means that moisture is traveling through the foundation in that area. That's the only way you get those deposits like that.
Usually it's the tell, right? So like if you know, let's say, you know, with you, Nick, your basement's never leaked, right? But yeah, knock on wood, yeah. But you know, all basements will leak. It's eventually, right? It's not if, it's when, right? So, and a lot of that plays a role. You know, how old your house is, right? The grade around your house. Are the downspouts further away, right? All of those things play a role in the longevity of that. But inevitably, at some point, your basement's going to leak, right? And oftentimes before it just shows up with water on the floor, you'll start seeing those signs. You'll start seeing now I'm seeing that efflorescence on the wall. I'm seeing some discoloration in the block, right? And for me, that's a tell that water's not being drained away correctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the original drainage system that keeps your basement dry, or grading, or whatever it may be, right?
That probably is the most overlooked red flag, is efflorescence, because it's just, well, there's a little white fuzz, people don't, if you don't understand the mechanics of what's at play and why that's there, it's easy to overlook.
You wipe it off and paint it, right?
Yeah,
and then
this is no
and
big
then
deal.
the new paint 3 months later has
Bubbles
the same,
and does the same thing.
the same thing, right? So, yeah, to answer your question, I think that's probably, especially with the spring coming, right? I mean, now
Everything about to melt.
That's it. We got all the snow. Everything's about to melt, right? There's going to be, the moisture content in the ground is going to be extremely high, right? And this is what's going to test those original drainage systems, right? And
Something else I was going to add when it comes to cracks is a lot of people get lulled into the false sense of security. I hear far too often from folks that, well, it's been that way for the 15 years we've owned it and it's never changed. And I'm like, how do you know it's never changed? Well, it's always looked like that. Okay, but the amount of movement that we're talking about is imperceivable to the naked eye, right? And the way I try to explain that to folks is like, do you notice your kid taller from one day to the next? Right. It's too slow, right? You don't see it. It's just all of a sudden you wake up one day and wow, you're a lot taller than you used to be. It's kind of the same thing with your foundation movement. When you're looking at it from day to day, you're never going to be able to perceive a change because it's happening so slowly. That's why benchmarking is important at the very least. You want somebody to take a very precise benchmark, preferably with a laser, so that you know exactly where that wall is at. That's the only way you're going to know if movement is occurring, right? Is to do some type of benchmark. Don't rely on just, well, it's looked like that ever since I bought it. Right?
Yeah, it's funny you say, because I can't tell you how many times I've been with a homeowner and they tell me that, well, it's been like this forever. And then the more we talk, the more we discuss it. Well, we did caulk and paint the cracks a couple years ago, and well, then we did it again,
right?
and then we did it again, and then I'm looking at it, and you can see where the caulk's all stretching because the wall's separating, and I can't tell you how many times that conversation, just by chatting with them a little more, right? In most cases, it's not like your basement wall just collapses, right?
What's unfortunate too is, like, I understand people's hesitation to call out a contractor, because one of the reasons I left the last contractor I was at is because their mindset is to just capitalize on any fears they have, any worries they have, and sell them something. Tell them you need to anchor this and you need to waterproof your whole house. One of the reasons I chose to work at this company, and why I'm proud to be a part of this company, is that I'm honest with everybody I talk to. If they don't need to waterproof their basement, I'm going to tell them that. Right. And I'll give them some tips, some pointers, some advice. Here's what you can do to, buy yourself more time, or, the things we've been talking about, extending your downspouts, fixing grading, stuff like that. Or say they're worried that they think their foundation is moving. And I'm able to determine that, no, actually, these are just shrinkage cracks. These are normal. These aren't something that you need to be worried about. that's exactly what I'm going to tell them. You know, I've always operated with the mindset that I'm not going to treat a customer any different than I would my friend or my family member or, you know, somebody that I'm close to. If I wouldn't spend money on it myself, I'm not going to tell you to either. And it's unfortunate that a lot of contractors don't operate that way.
I would add that I think you become their foundation guy when you do that, right? Like when you approach it that way and you're honest and you talk somebody through their problem, right? Maybe they don't have business for you today, or maybe we're not going to push something on them that they really don't need, or they may need down the road, but is it necessary today, right? I think you become their foundation guy, and then when they're at church or they're hanging out with their buddies or whatnot or friends, right? Family, they know that you've done them right.
Yeah.
Right?
When that conversation comes up,
you're the guy, right?
Right.
And we want to be your foundation guy, right? I mean, we really do. And taking advantage of a situation, I don't think, does that.
I mean, that's why I say, like, it's unfortunate that, like, that's why a lot of people don't call, because they don't want to get pressured into doing something that they maybe can't afford or they're not really sure that they need. So, that's why I'm proud to be a part of a company like this, to where I know I'm not expected to twist somebody's arm or to try to trick them into spending money that we all know they don't need to spend. You know? So, and I feel like that's another huge part of being a close-knit, family-owned company, where we all truly care about our reputation and what we're here to do. We're not just trying to make a quick buck and get on down the road. We really want to help people.
It's funny. We actually get a lot of 5-star reviews from people that aren't our customer, right? We went out there,
told them the truth. Yeah,
we went out there, told them the truth, helped them, right, and pointed them in the right direction, even, right? Maybe it's not. Maybe they need a roofer, right? Or maybe their problem requires this or that.
Landscaper, something. Yeah,
right. But we've pointed them in the right direction, and next thing you know, we got a 5-star review because the other 2 companies they had out quoted them $30,000 in basement waterproofing
every time,
right? And so I think that works for everybody, right? I mean,
it's a good way to do business.
Absolutely.
I agree.
But I imagine that it's still a good idea to call sooner than later when you notice any of these issues, to get on top of. If it is a problem, the earlier you get on it, it's probably the better.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like any problem, I mean, the longer it goes on, the more expensive it gets, right? I mean, if your car starts making a funny noise and you just keep driving it, it's probably going to be more expensive by the time you fix that problem, right? So it's really no different. My point that I was making is just that, make sure that you found that good, reputable contractor. Check their reviews. Make sure that there's somebody who's going to be honest with you and give you their honest opinion, about what's going on there. Because there are far too many out there that will, no matter what's going on, before they ever see your house or pull down your street, they know you're getting a $30,000 quote today. Right? It's unfortunate, but
it's true. Yeah, it is true. You're to answer your question a little more. We deal a lot with basement walls that are deflecting and are bowing in, right? And we see them all the way to the point where they collapse, and we're lifting your house up to replace them, right? But that is 100% avoidable, right? And it's almost always related to poor drainage, right? And something as simple as waterproofing or waterproofing that wall, we'll just say, right? To you think about like putting a Pepsi can or a pop can in the freezer, right? You get that hydrostatic pressure and the can swells, right? The same concept applies to the soil outside. As it's saturated, soil naturally expands just with more moisture in it. It can freeze and expand, right, and until it bursts, right? And whereas if you just popped a hole in the bottom of that pop can, now you're alleviating that hydrostatic pressure. The can can't swell, right? So it's very common that we see basement walls where the wall is showing just ever so slight signs of deflection in it, and we can do a huge repair to stabilize it and make sure it's never going to move. But what if we just waterproof it? We drain the pressure. And you sit and monitor. Maybe it'll stop. Maybe it won't. But
that's where having the right contractor is really key. Somebody who's going to be open and honest about that. Do the benchmarking that's going to be required, right? But allow you to take that wait and see approach, as opposed to, no, you just need to do it all. This is going to be a $60,000 job, and there's just no other way to do it. We try to do that for everybody. I mean, because at the end of the day, money is a factor for
Sure.
all of us, right? So, trying to help solve their problem and at the same time meet their budget is something that I'm mindful of. You know, when I'm looking at any project, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let it influence, you know, what I tell them as far
Yeah.
as what's wrong. I'm still gonna be, you know, completely open about this is exactly what's happening. This is what I recommend, but I can, you know, sometimes try to work out a way to address the worst of it. You know, like let's at least get this part that absolutely needs to be done now, and we can work out a plan to figure out the rest of it as time
Yeah,
goes
we
on,
definitely don't
right?
want to minimize the problem,
No,
right?
no,
I mean,
no,
if the
right.
problem is the problem, right?
Right.
If you need surgery, you need surgery, right?
Yeah.
But if you can avoid surgery, right? Let's go that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great, guys. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate all the information, knowledge you guys shared, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, very
All right.
good.
Thanks for
Thanks
having
for having us.
All right.